Ripper Crew, or the Chicago Rippers, was an organized crime group of serial killers, cannibals, rapists, and necrophiles. The group was composed of Robin Gecht and three associates, Edward Spritzer and brothers Andrew and Thomas Kokoralius. They were suspected in the murders of 17 women in Illinois in 1981 and 1982, as well as the unrelated fatal shooting of a man in a random drive-by shooting. According to one of the detectives who investigated the case, Gecht made Charles Manson look like a Boy Scout. Listen up, tune in, keep back while we go into a deep dive here on VolcanicMindz TV, where we bring you the latest horror crimes of the 1980s. Let's start by shedding light on this dark horror story, by going in on the background of these satanic life-takers. In the chronicles of criminal history, few tales are as chilling, disturbing, and horrifying as the Ripper Crew. This notorious group of killers, whose reign of terror struck fear into the hearts of the public and baffled law enforcement, remains a haunting and dark chapter in the chronicles of true crime. The story of the Ripper Crew is one that both fascinates and horrifies, offering a glimpse into the depths of human depravity and the relentless pursuit of justice. But who are the Ripper Crew, and what drove them to commit such heinous acts? To fully comprehend the horror of their crimes, it is essential to dig into their origins, motivations, and the gruesome details of their reign of terror. VolcanicMindz TV is here to shed light on the terrifying narrative of the Ripper Crew, from their genesis to their eventual unmasking discovery on who they were and the enduring impact they have left on the world of criminal investigations. The Ripper Crew, a name that still sends shivers down the spines of those who remember their reign of terror, originated in the early 1980s in Chicago, Illinois. This sinister group consisted of four individuals: Robin Gecht, Edward Spritzer, Andrew Kokoralius, and Thomas Kokoralius. What began as a seemingly ordinary group of acquaintances would soon evolve into one of American history's most gruesome and feared serial killer groups. Their reign of terror spanned from 1981 to 1982, lasting approximately a year. During this chilling period, the Ripper Crew was responsible for a series of heinous crimes, including abduction, sexual assault, mutilation, and murder. Their victims, predominantly young women, were abruptly and mercilessly cut short. The exact number of victims claimed by the Ripper Crew remains uncertain, but estimates suggest that they may have been responsible for the deaths of as many as 18 individuals. The group's preferred method of operation involved abducting women, subjecting them to horrifying acts of violence, and ultimately murdering them. These brutal crimes sent shockwaves through Chicago and left law enforcement agencies grappling with the huge urgency of apprehending the cold, malice, psycho predators/perpetrators. The beginning of the evil that drove the Ripper Crew can be traced back to its members' troubled backgrounds and psychological profiles. Each member had a unique path leading them down a dark, twisted road. Understanding these individuals' early life and upbringing is crucial in unraveling the complex web of factors that contributed to their descent into darkness. The Ripper Crew's reign of terror cast a long and chilling shadow over Chicago from 1981 to 1982, approximately 1 year that would forever scar the city's history. During this time, the group embarked on a gruesome crime spree that left the entire region in fear and bewilderment. Their methods and sheer brutality shocked law enforcement and the public. The group's preferred targets were young women, often abducted from the streets of Chicago. These women endured unimaginable horrors at the hands of their captors, including sexual assault, torture, and mutilation. Tragically, most of these victims met their end horrifyingly, their lives brutally short. The Ripper Crew's crimes were marked by a chilling level of sadism and a signature modus operandi. They were known for removing a breast from some of their victims, which led to the media dubbing them the Ripper Crew. This gruesome act was a grim reminder of their depravity and the terror they instilled in the hearts of those who followed their crimes. Law enforcement faced daunting challenges in responding to this reign of terror. The elusive nature of the crimes, combined with the absence of modern forensic technology, made it incredibly difficult to track down the culprits. The community was gripped by fear, and pressure mounted on investigators to bring the perpetrators to justice. Now, with that being said, the Ripper crew's reign of terror would not last forever, and their eventual unmasking would reveal a depth of darkness that shocked the world. The story of their capture and subsequent trial is a testament to the relentless pursuit of justice and the determination of law enforcement to bring these monsters to account for their heinous crimes. Breakthroughs in the investigation came after months of tireless work by dedicated law enforcement officers. The pivotal moment occurred when a survivor of one of the Ripper crew's attacks came forward with critical information. This brave individual's testimony provided investigators with crucial leads that would ultimately unravel the group's identity. As the puzzle pieces fell into place, law enforcement closed in on the members of the Ripper crew. They were subsequently arrested, and the shocking truth about the extent of their crimes began to emerge. The group's leader, Robin Gecht, and other members, Edward Spreitzer, Andrew Kokoralius, and Thomas Kokoralius, were all apprehended and brought to justice. Please be sure to like, comment, and hit that hype button right before subscribing, and I'll be bringing more content you can listen or watch too. Here on VolcanicMindz TV, back to the story, and one last gruesome detail I will provide, but I will not go too far down a rabbit hole, as this is YouTube. Okay, this is the people of the state of Illinois versus Andrew Kokoralius and the opinion of the court document. Following a jury trial in the Circuit Court of DuPage County, the defendant, Andrew Kokoralius, was convicted of the murder and aggravated kidnapping of Lorraine Borowski. At a capital sentencing hearing requested by the state, the same jury determined that the defendant was eligible for the death penalty and that there were no mitigating circumstances sufficient to preclude imposition of that sentence. The trial judge accordingly sentenced the defendant to death for the murder conviction. The judge later sentenced the defendant to an extended term of 30 years imprisonment for the conviction for aggravated kidnapping. The defendant's execution was stayed pending direct review by the court. At trial, the state presented evidence of the victim's disappearance, the discovery and identification of her remains, and the defendant's oral and written confessions to her abduction and murder. Over objection, the state was also allowed to introduce evidence of the defendant's participation in 2 similar murders. The defendant testified in his own behalf at trial. He recanted his confessions, and he denied having had any part in the offenses charged here and any other crimes in which the state attempted to implicate him. The victim in this case, 21-year-old Lori Borowski, disappeared on Saturday, May 15, 1982. Lori was employed as a secretary in a real estate office in Elmhurst, and a neighbor saw her leave for work around 8:15 that morning. Lori's office was located about 3 blocks from her apartment, and she would walk to work. Lori's employer, Don Stibbe, arrived at the office between 8:45 and 9 o'clock on the morning of her disappearance. The office had not yet been opened, though Lori normally would have arrived by 8:30. Mr. Stibbe found some objects on the pavement in front of the office: shoes, keys, cosmetics, coins, and a hand tool and nut driver. Later that morning, Mr. Stibbe reported Lori's disappearance to Elmhurst police. The shoes and keys found in front of the office were subsequently identified as Lori's. Frederick Moberly, who owned a store located in the same shopping plaza as the office where Lori was employed, arrived at work around 10 minutes to 8 on the morning of Lori's disappearance. At that time, Moberly saw a reddish-orange van parked in an area of the lot that normally was empty. He did not notice any shoes or other items in front of the real estate office, which was located about 50 feet from his own store. Shown a photograph of the van allegedly used in Lori's abduction, Moberly testified that the vehicle depicted was similar to the one he had seen in the parking lot on May 15, 1982. The victim's skeletal remains were discovered on October 10, 1982, in a cemetery in Darien. The remains were found in an unused portion of the cemetery and were about 120 to 130 feet from a gravel road. The victim's neighbor identified the blouse and slacks present on the body as the same clothing the victim was wearing on the morning of her disappearance. The victim's blouse had been raised to armpit level, and her bra had been lowered. A purse was found some 30 feet away, and items of jewelry were found on or near the remains. At trial, the victim's mother, Mrs. Lorraine May Borowski, identified the purse and jewelry as Lori's. Identification of the remains was made through the aid of dental records and X-rays, and a post-mortem examination was conducted by Frank Orlowski, professor of physical anthropology at Northern Illinois University. At trial, Professor Orlowski testified that when the remains were discovered, skin covered the front surface of the victim's body, including the lower thoracic region, part of the abdominal region, and the right leg and part of the left leg. The navel and right nipple were present, but the left nipple was not. The skin ended about 2 inches below where the left nipple would have been. Professor Orlowski did not find any signs of trauma or evidence of animal tooth marks on any part of the skin, including the portion from the victim's chest area. He believed that there were several possible explanations for the absence of the left nipple, including decomposition, insect, or other animal activity, and amputation. The post-mortem examination disclosed a number of bone injuries. Professor Orlowski found 3 frontal sites of trauma in the upper chest region. All 3 wounds were small and circular, and he believed that they were consistent with stab wounds from a sharp instrument, such as an ice pick. There were also frontal wounds on 2 lower vertebrae, but Professor Orlowski was unable to determine whether or not they had been caused by the same stabs that had produced the wounds in the victim's upper chest. Professor Orlowski found 3 separate wounds to the victim's back, which he believed could have been caused by either a knife or an ice pick type of instrument. In addition to the injuries already described, Professor Orlowski found that the victim's nasal bone had been fractured. The defendant was eventually arrested in connection with the abduction and murder of Lori Borowski. On October 20th, 1982, Chicago police officers stopped a reddish-orange van that matched a description given to the police by a crime victim. The van was being driven by Edward Spreitzer and belonged to Robin Gecht. In a subsequent search, 3 knives were found in the back of the van. The inside handle on the back door was missing. According to the trial testimony, the door could be opened only by inserting a tool where the lock should have been, and the nut driver found with Lori Borowski's keys and other effects in front of her office could have been used for that purpose. Spreitzer and Gecht were arrested sometime later, and during the evening of November 7th, 1982, Spreitzer led police officers to the defendant's home in Villa Park. The defendant returned that night with the officers to Area 5 headquarters in Chicago. The defendant was questioned that evening and the following 2 days. During that period, the defendant confessed to the murder of Lori Borowski and to the murders of several other women. The most shocking event besides the unalive of the innocent women is the fact after 35 years, the brother of Andrew Kokoralius, Thomas Kokoralius, Thomas was released from jail. These days, he lives in Peoria and maintains his innocence, but the family members of Lori Borowski, one of the victims of the Ripper crew, are upset that Thomas Kokoralius is free and saying he is innocent.